Squad is a game that is usually played very seriously. However, sometimes you can have fun with it and mess around.
Has anybody seen the poison for Cusco? I've kind of been looking for that poison for a little while now.
That's actually like an accurate reenactment of Russians right now.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of idiots with guns.
Even while having fun, you usually end up playing the game in a way that is tactical. Along with that, if you are new to the game, you usually try to learn as much as you can before you try anything extreme. But even with that, you tend to stand out sometimes among the players who know what they're doing. Now, I have almost 300 hours in the game and have played with many different players. However, there really isn't anything that stands out among them, as some have thousands of hours and some just picked up the game. But you can usually tell how experienced they are, so having a player that plays in a way that no one else does is very rare, or so I thought. On May 17th, 2023, I would run into a player that, even to this day, I remember very, very well. This is the story of Squad's most interesting player. Our story starts out on a map called Yuppy, which is a 17.5 square kilometer area filled with fields and small villages located near the Russian-Ukrainian border. As the match started, my squad would head to the capture point of Hilltop Encampment, as we were the back cap squad, meaning that we were going to capture all the points at the back so our team could go to the front lines. This is usually a pretty boring part of the game mode, however this is where our first encounter would happen. As we get to the point and get out of the lodgy, I would get on this tent and look to the west to see a player running really far away. Now, I didn't think much of it at the time, as we are the Batcap squad and it was impossible for any enemies to be here, so pushing that far away is completely useless. But that player did anyway, giving me the impression that they may just be a new player. Another point I noticed at this time was that the player that ran away was a marksman, which is a class that is either played by people with a lot of hours or by new players trying to learn. And based on the first impression of them, I thought again, proves my idea that they are a newer player. So, as we captured the objective, we looked to move to the next one. But I did have in my mind that a newer player that ran that far away probably wasn't in the lodge yet. However, I would be wrong, as sitting right in front of me, driving, is the marksman yet again. But at the time, I didn't notice the rifle, so I didn't think anything of it. But little did I know that this would be the start of my curiosity of the player named SimieBonaire. Now, I do want to mention that driving in Squad is not that easy, as high speeds can be hard to control and everything in the game is done in first person, making it way harder to do, well, just about anything. So a newer player would have a bit of a hard time when it comes to driving vehicles and requires some practice. But as we were driving to the next point, his driving seemed fine. That is until...
Okay. So we're just gonna head over toward airfield, because if it ends up going west, that's where we're gonna head.
Ugh.
We okay? Did we flip the truck? Son of a bitch.
The Logi jumped off a cliff and fell on its side, requiring us to flip it back over and waste some time. However, at this point, I still wasn't sure who was driving, so no one was on my radar. We got the Logi flipped back over and I got back in. We had a teammate that got out for some reason and ran up the hill, so we decided to wait for a quick second to see if he would get back in. Then the driver would do something out of the ordinary. He positions the Logi in a way that he would then drive down the hill and park the Logi right on top of our friendly player, causing him to freak out and teleport all over the map. And with that one action right there, SimieBonaire was now not only on my radar, but my teammates as well. So we continued to drive to the next location, and based on his driving, it seemed like he was really skilled, as when we got there, he would do a drift to park the Logi on the edge of the road, which again is not easy to do. On top of that, Simie also knew how to unload the Logi, which kept me on my toes, as the idea of him being a newer player was starting to fade away. Not to mention that to this point, and out of all the actions he has done so far, they have not said a word, which for Squad is not that common. My squad squad lead then gets in the Logi with them, and the squad leader tells Simi to stop and park it and shut the engine off. However, they don't listen. They drive to the north right next to our hab and parks it there. Now this isn't really that unusual, but you can tell this was done on purpose, as there's a really long delay between when the squad leader asked to stop driving, which again adds on to everything being weird. But boy, would it get a whole lot worse. We would then proceed to capture the next point, and Simi was in charge of picking us up again. I didn't notice at the time that Simi also tried to drive over a teammate on the way to the pickup location, but that would be a sneak peek to what would happen in the future. Our squad lead wanted to grab some materials from the radio we placed earlier, so he proceeds to tell Simi to drive into the blue circle so that we can grab materials. And when we got in, another interesting event happened.
Hey, you're good. Stop, driver. Driver, stop. Stop, 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 stop.
Now, although they didn't stop driving the vehicle for a while, this again supported the idea that they are a new player. However, at this point, I am confused, as some of the actions they have made so far have seemed like a player who knows what they're doing, but other actions seem to be like a new player. So I started to lose my mind. Heading to the next location with Simi as our driver, things just kept getting better, as he takes a shortcut through the woods and drives next to this trench, and sure enough, he hits a tree and lands in the pit, and now is when people really start to notice.
Well, we're supposed to be going north, but... Is this the same driver that flipped us? We should probably get a new driver.
Simi, do you have a driver's license?
Somebody else asked.
Little did they know, Simi has been the driver this entire match besides the start, and we have been on so many adventures now, but it would not be over yet. After all this terrible driving that we experienced, our hope for Simi was getting worse. But as we approached our next location, there would be a turn in the road that Simi would then do this.
They're actually a decent driver, but like, dude, that right there.
Driver, I need you.
Causing a reaction from multiple members of our team, as a perfect drift through this tight road was pulled off by the person who has made so many mistakes before. He drove the truck to the next spot for a base and would unload it. I then came to a conclusion.
Simi is a good driver, but they're just memeing.
I figured, based on all the information we had in the past, he was a good player that was just playing the game in a different way compared to everyone else. However, Simi never stops amazing me, because after unloading, he would start driving the Logi straight up the hill exactly where a lot of enemies were, which would give out our position, putting us in a bad fight. Luckily, he turned and drove away, but ended up parking next to the radio, which is really bad as it helps enemies to find our equipment, hurting us as a team in the long run. So some players moved it away, telling him why it's bad to park there. And with that, I thought the story of SimieBonaire was over and that he would be a player that I would never forget throughout all my time in squad. But the legend of SimieBonaire is not over yet. While running to the objective, I would hear an enemy tank driving in our direction, so the first thought I had was to get down so it wouldn't see me, as there's no way I can fight a tank. But while sitting here, something interesting would happen again. Sure enough, SimieBonaire, with his rifle in hand, came up next to me and then started running directly at the enemy tank, chasing it as it drove away. And I have never seen something like that happen before. Then, a few moments later, Simi would die and respawn and did something that amazed the entire team yet again. As we started to get deep into enemy territory, we would hear a friendly Logi, and my squad lead would ask one question.
Who grabbed the Logi truck?
And sure enough, it was our friend Simi who drove up the hill, and we told him to drive it away, and he crashed into a rock. And I continued on my way laughing, saying one final remark.
Behind you guys,
Simi is wild, man.
And after all the amazing moments and hardships that came, SimieBonaire would shortly leave the game, never to be seen again. Whether he was a new player or just someone who played the game in a different way, we will never know. No matter the answer, my takeaway is that whether you have skill or not, a game as big as Squad can be played in many different ways, just as long as you have fun. And that, my friends, was the story of Squad's most interesting player and the ending of the legend of SimieBonaire. If you want to catch moments like these happen live, be sure to follow me on Kick, where I live stream all the time and capture moments like these. I would also appreciate a like and sub, as it really helps the channel. Thank you for watching.